Continuous improvement comes in lots of different flavors and styles. I'm Bella Engelbach, and I'm inviting you to journey with me to the edges of lean. Episode 86, Continuous Improvement and Compassionate Coaching with Erin Whalen. Erin Whalen is a coach whose practice is focused on serving the people who work with the grieving and dying. These are bereavement professionals who need perhaps more than anyone to be seen, heard, and supported. Erin comes to coaching through the path of acting and the art of improvisation. Join me at the edges of lean to hear her unique and compelling story. Erin Whalen, welcome to the edges of lean.
Thank you so much for having me, Bella. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm very glad to have you here, and I always love when I'm talking to someone who is coaching, because coaching is such a big part of the lean and continuous improvement world, and we can learn so much from people who are coaching, coming from other backgrounds. So tell us about Erin and what it is you do, and tell us about your pathway to doing what you do today.
Well, it's been a windy pathway. I think all of our lives, if we look back on where we've been and where we are now, it's just such a windy path. So I started my company in 2020, and there's a whole backstory of what I was doing before that. But even since I founded my company in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, I didn't know what I was doing with it. Even in the past, 2 years and change, I've been through a lot of different iterations of my business, compassionate coaching, and what I do and who I serve and how I do it. And so I think the short version is I come to this work from an acting background. I've been a professional actress in the DC area since 2006. And I've been freelancing since about that time. And when it came time for the pandemic to hit, all of those freelance jobs went away. And so I had to start over and figure out what I could do in the meantime. And that's when I founded my coaching company. And even that took a minute to figure out what in the world I was doing with compassionate coaching. But what it is today is I guide teams in the helping profession, particularly bereavement professionals and end-of-life professionals. And I want to fill their cups. And so I have programming that helps them feel seen and heard and helps them get through their days more easily. I particularly focus on some team building and communication skills training to help them get those cups filled so that they can just be in that profession, that really hard profession, as long as they want to be.
Wow, that is really interesting. I have to say it's really different. So I have had a previous guest on the show who actually came out of, I was part of the bereavement industry, and we had a wonderful conversation about leadership and leading people in the time of grief, but it was very much focused on people who were, in a workplace and perhaps had a colleague or a spouse or partner who passed away or some other loss that caused them to grieve. But we didn't talk about those folks who were, in the bereavement industry, and I just know during the pandemic that, things were very, very hard for them, as it was actually in healthcare as well. And I'm sure that there's been a lot of people thinking about, do I really want to do this anymore? So how do your clients find you? How do they come to you? And what do they ask for when they come?
That's a really good question. So I'm based in the DC area. And so a lot of my having them find me, having me find them, having us have a synergy is a lot of different ways. I was very fortunate to present at the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization's virtual conference in September 2022. And then I'm slated to present again for them in April of 2023. So it's been lovely to be able to, be there, serving the people who are out in the field doing the work, and to be able to reach them through that platform of conference. So that's been really just a huge gift to be able to do that. And then I recently told someone, I said, well, 2022 was kind of the year I was meeting a million people. So I'm really an introvert. I do fine one-on-one, but if there's more than one person, I'm just, very nervous. And, but I did start doing a ton of networking. And the more I refined my niche, which honestly has been less than a year since I've really defined this exact niche. The more I define my niche, the more, it's such a unique niche that people would say, oh, well, maybe you should meet so-and-so, or maybe you should, oh, I know a gal, or I went to college with someone who's now doing this thing. And so I met all these people, and now the things that I do are so unique that I decided I want to bring them all together. So I'm actually hosting an event for all of them to come and experience this thing that I do called Playback Theater. So sometimes it's my own making of you meet so-and-so and they introduce you to so-and-so. And then I take all the so-and-sos and I put them together and I bring them to a space so they can meet each other and they can experience what I have to offer them in Playback Theater.
So you're actually building a community then of people who perhaps were not in touch with each other very much before.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's marvelous.
It's the early stages, right? It's my first one of these events is going to take place on March 3rd. So just a month away from our recording time, which will be, probably in the past.
Yeah. It'll be in the past by the time this show goes out. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
The first of many, hopefully.
That's great. So, okay. So explain to me, Erin, how does acting make you a better coach?
Wow. How long do I have? How long can I talk about this? Because there's so many layers.
Well, you've got a little bit of time, so dive on in.
Well, for one thing, one of the acting that I do primarily is a certain type of improv, and one of the beautiful mandates, if you will, of improv is yes and the theory is that when you're on stage with someone and they're doing something, every time someone takes on a character or gives you a role, it's a gift. And so you always say yes to whatever that person is doing, but you can't just stop at yes, you have to move the scene along. And so after the yes is an and so yes and is just this powerful part of improv, and it is an amazing segue into coaching. So in coaching, and the type of coaching I do is more communication skills coaching. I started off as a life coach, joining the ranks of 5 billion other life coaches on the planet. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, I've been doing communication skills work for a long time. So that is where I excel and can really bring something different. And so yes, and is really helpful in coaching, specifically with communication coaching, right? Because it's about conversation. It's about being with another person. It's about hearing their story and having them hear your story. And sometimes we're in our own silos. Sometimes we're just sitting, in our own agendas. Like Bella, I can see, you nodded along, right? We're making eye contact with each other as well as we can on Zoom. There's an engagement, and I can tell you're not just sitting there waiting for me to stop so that you can ask an unrelated question. You're engaged in what I'm saying, right? And so you're yes-anding me right now. And so in communication coaching, yes, and is very much at the root of what I do and how I help people.
So yes, and is that it's so powerful, right? Because and we're so used to saying yes, but, and particularly from, often when people come into coaching, they come into coaching because they want to improve something or meet a goal. And when they start to talk about their goal, there's always a lot of buts in their language. I would do this, but I can't do this. So saying Yes, and has got to be opening up a lot of doors for people. But you're talking about, so I said, and you're talking about communication skills. And what I'm hearing and what you're saying is that the communication skills you're teaching are not just about, am I going to get my point across, which I think is what a lot of people want out of their communication skills. But what you're really talking about is, how do I make sure that I'm really understanding other people? Is that what's you're really talking about?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're communicating all the time. We're in the presence of another human being, right? Even if we're not talking, we're still communicating. And so if there are two people in conversation with each other, even non-verbally, each person has a story. Each person has, I don't like the way this word comes out, but an agenda, right? Or something that they're hoping to get or convey or communicate, or something that they hope the other person says or does. So we each bring every part of ourselves to every conversation, our history, I might, there might be a neighbor in my life who has hair and, glasses that remind me of you. And so I might already be, nervous around you. That's part of the story of me getting into this conversation with you, Bella. So it's about my own self-awareness. Okay, what is going on for me? What am I here bringing to this conversation, this story? And what is Bella bringing? Maybe you're exhausted. Maybe you're nervous. Maybe you're excited. I don't know until we talk about it, but I'm trying to listen and listen, not just to your words, but to all that you're communicating with your body language, with your tone of voice. All of it is part of the conversation that we're having.
So how does that help someone who is working in bereavement?
So if you think about that work, that is for someone who does that work, right? Someone who's either helping people at the end of their life, as we think about hospice professionals or bereavement professionals helping people grieve. Usually for the person dying or the person grieving, it is either a brand new experience, right? I mean, we only die once. So if they're dying, it's probably their first experience, being on their deathbed, literally. And for those who grieve, it depends, but, we've all been touched by grief, but this could be the most significant loss someone's had. For someone who does that work day in and day out, it's part of their routine, their habit, their livelihood, their calling, their vocation. It's part of all of that. But for this other person, it is a unique moment in time that will be etched in their memory, right? And if the professional is bringing any sort of exhaustion to the conversation or resentment, maybe they're being overworked and they don't feel seen and heard by their agency or their organization. Maybe they're dealing with their own personal stuff that maybe does or doesn't have to do with bereavement. They might be grieving someone that they've lost. And so, the bereavement professionals and the end-of-life professionals, they do this so regularly and they do it lovingly. I'm not saying that that's not there, but there is this component of the person who's hearing that message is hearing it for the first time, and it will forever be etched in their hearts and in their memory. And so how can it be new and genuine as they say it this time? How can it be really meeting that person exactly where they are? How can it be showing the compassion and the empathy that they need in that moment, despite the fact that this is, the 13th conversation they've had today that's like this?
And you were just starting to glow there. For those of you who are listening, as Erin was talking, there was this beautiful glow coming around her. I thought maybe there were.
I can bring it back. I just tilt a little bit. Isn't that's just the sunlight? That's just the afternoon sunlight hitting me.
It's a lovely sunny day today, the day that we're recording.
Yes.
So you're talking about people being able to bring a real authenticity to conversations that are as you said, are unique for the people who are on the sort of the client side of it, but for them can run the risk of becoming routine, or perhaps tainted. I'll say tainted by what everything else that's going on in their life. So people need to come and be authentic, but but what you're saying is they can't be authentic in a way that is impacting negatively the people that they're working with. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, that was so well stated. I love that, Bella. That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. Yeah. And so I think part of it is, when we do something for such a long time, we forget that it's new to someone else. And, in the acting that I've done since 2006, a lot of the work that I've done has been this concept of professional role playing, where you can step into a role so that someone can practice having a conversation in a very safe and low stakes environment. And then, I'm really that person. And then I'm able to give you feedback and say, okay, like this, when you leaned forward, I felt really cared for. When you looked off to the side, or when you looked down at your notes, or when you did this, or this is how I felt. I felt disconnected. I felt confused. When you used this word, I didn't know what you meant. And so I was stuck on that word, and I missed the next 3 things you said. So we can give them that feedback, right? And so that's one of the concepts I use now in compassionate coaching, is I bring on my professional role players so that people who are having these conversations on a routine basis, or maybe they're new, maybe they're entering hospice, as a nurse fresh out of nursing school, and they need to have these really hard conversations. Like, isn't it helpful to have a way to have the conversation before you have to have the conversation, right? And to see what works, to see how much silence is really needed, right? How much pausing is really helpful and effective, how much space we really need to give someone. So that's what I like to do. I like to bring in the acting by bringing in my professional role players so that these people can have conversations and get that feedback and get that practice, and then go out and sharpen those tools for the real world when they're working with clients and patients.
The coaching then that you're talking about is much more like, I would say, sports coaching, right? Than you were talking, previously, so about life coaching. Where in sports coaching, the athlete will perform an action and then get feedback from the coach. If your hand was a little bit higher, have you thought about if you turn your head this way, why don't you try that? So you're giving that feedback. They're practicing a behavior or an action, and you're giving the feedback on that. But what's so cool about it, Erin, is that you're giving feedback as a real human being, right? This is like, I'm a human being. I'm playing this role, but I'm still here as a human. I'm still Erin, and I still react emotionally if you don't look me in the eye when you're telling me what's going to happen next in my journey, right? Yes. Those are the kinds of things that you're able to do by bringing your humanness to it, but also your professional acting experience. Yes. That is very cool.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, is that, and it's all about the emotional life, right? And we all walk through life and every day with these emotions that are just, at the surface or bubbling underneath. And yeah, so that's the beauty of it, is that we can, as actors who have this specific training and skill set, like, we can be anyone. Like, we can literally be anyone, even if we're not familiar with the situation, because we can step into those shoes based on the emotional state of that person, right? So I can be, a cancer, patient. I can be a hospice patient. I can be those things because I can connect myself. Now, granted, I don't have that lived experience. So I'm not trying to say, right, oh, it's so easy to step into. No, it's not. It's not easy. It's not easy, but there is a realness to it. And that is the highest compliment we can ever receive when we do this work, is that, oh, that felt real. I felt like I was really talking to a patient. That's exactly how that patient would respond. Like, then we know we got it, like, if we get that feedback that, no, this felt really real. But it's just about connecting to me as a human being very aware my own emotions, my own fluctuations of emotion, and just being very present so that I can be that person fully, let go of my inner critic, right? Because that's always going to be there telling me this and that, and just be present so that I can give really honest feedback about the words that were said, the things that were done, and how I felt as another human being.
Wow. That really, it answers a question for me that I've had for a long time. It's sort of a little bit off topic to the coaching, but it may be related. So I always wonder for people who are acting, and you did a lot of your acting in this professional role-playing role as being, I believe, a standard patient, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for people who are acting, who are doing this sort of the same thing over and over again, who are people who are, on stage and doing the same show night after night, how do they keep that fresh, right? How is that, isn't that the same thing that you're talking about with these professionals that you are coaching? It's keeping that their performance fresh, right? So, actors, on this marvelous Broadway show, and they've done, 8 shows a week, and they're really exhausted and their feet hurt. And, somebody at home is mad at them for saying, but they have to get on stage and be this other person just the same way they did yesterday, or maybe even better than they did yesterday. So, yeah. So is that how that works? It takes training to learn to do that. I mean, that's not something people can do naturally.
Yeah, no, and I've done less like once I learned, once I fell in love with playback theater, which is improv, and there's no scripted component of it, then I basically didn't do a lot of other like stage theater after that. But the little bit of stage theater I have done, it is a challenge, what you're saying. And I think it is about becoming that person. Like, and you can tell the actors, like if you see a show more than once, you're like, that guy delivered the lines exactly the same way. And it's like, you kind of get into a rhythm, and you have to watch yourself from like just being a rote, like saying it exactly the same way every night. You have to be present. Like you have to, because that person over there, your scene partner, may be saying things in a little different way, or may take a little bit more of a pause before looking at you. And you got to be present to that, so that that, your response should be more spontaneous. I mean, scripted, but spontaneous. Yeah, that's an art. And I honestly don't miss scripted theater. It's not something I want to go back to anytime soon. So yeah, I'd forgotten about that part of it, where it's like, how do you keep it fresh? How do you keep it authentic and real every time for every single performance? That's a great question, Bella.
Yeah, I don't think it's something that I could do for sure. So tell us about playback theater. What is that?
So playback theater, it's an improvisational art form. And in a playback theater show, let's say we're doing this, and it's just open to the public. Anyone can come. There's a troupe of playback actors and a musician or two, and then someone who conducts or facilitates the process. And we would have just invited people to come to the show, from the public, and there would be a theme. Like maybe the theme is, I was going to say we're coming up on Valentine's Day, but that'll be in the past by the time this is aired. But let's say, summer's coming. And so maybe the theme is, summers from my past, or summer memories from my childhood, or, I'm just making this up. So, but there's some kind of theme. And then people come to the playback show, the performance, and through the guidance of this conductor, this facilitator, they will answer questions, right? And it could be, really simple at first, like, how was your day? How did you get here tonight or today? Like, tell me about a story from your day. Or maybe the theme is more in line with a feeling, like stories of joy. And you're like, okay, what made you joyful today? So the conductor will ask a question and someone will answer, and then they will get more details and ask some more questions to get that deeper story. Meanwhile, the actors and the musician are on stage and we're just listening very intently, right? And so this is a little conversation that's happening. Everyone else in the audience can hear the conversation, hear the storytelling happening. And then the conductor will say, let's watch. And as soon as they say, let's watch, everyone witnesses the playing back, hence the name playback, of that story. And it's with music and movement and drama, and we elevate it in an artistic way. And it's not a chronological story. We play back different elements of the story, different moments that were important to the person. Remember, we're listening to that storyteller and we're attuned to their nonverbal. So maybe their tone really changed. Maybe they got a little choked up when they talked about, they remember going to the beach with their family when they were young, or maybe they, maybe they went over this part really fast, but they came back to it later, right? And so we pick up on those things. And so maybe I might decide to kind of bring that to the forefront. And so I might be, the beach, I might be the mama, I might be, that person as a kid. And so we play back their story and we reflect it back to them. And the whole audience has experienced the storytelling and then the reflection of that story with this music and movement and drama. And it's really transformational. It's really a cathartic and beautiful experience. And then one story leads to another, and someone else will tell a story, and we move through the show, the evening or the day together, and people tell stories, and we play it back for them. We honor them with our stories, with our artistry.
Wow. I can imagine. I mean, people talk about that feeling of like, I feel seen. I mean,
Yes.
You would really feel seen, right?
Yes.
Right. Wow. And then the actors and the musicians, of course, they're not like talking to each other or planning, here's what we're going to do. It's all improv.
Yep.
And you're moving the story forward,
Yep.
and building on what each the other people are doing.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah, you get it. Yeah. There's no pre-planning. We just, when we get to if we do a fuller show and it's a longer show, like maybe 90 minutes, then we get to the point where people are telling longer stories, and then they do get to choose who they want to play them in the story. So they get to select one of the actors, but that's really the only planning that happens, right? Is those longer forms, and they can actually cast the story. I want you to be my mom. I want you to be me. But yeah, it's spontaneous.
Are you ever surprised by who people pick?
Oh yeah, all the time. I'm actually delightfully surprised because, sometimes we get it in our head that, men can't play women and women can't play men.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm white, but, I've definitely played people of color, and people of color have played white people. And, the audience seems to get it by that point that we've been together for, an hour or so. And now we're getting into like the deeper stories. And so I'm delighted that they feel comfortable asking someone to play them that might not look like them or be the same age or be the same race. And that's just wonderful. It's exciting to see that.
They're just really demonstrating a high level of trust in what you might do.
Yes, that's a good point. They probably intuitively trust someone with their story that, they've seen them do other stories, and they know they can trust them. That's a very good point. It probably is a very deep level of trust that they're using to guide that decision.
So do you do this with your clients? Is this something that your clients get to experience?
Yeah. So this is one of the main things that I do. And like I said, by the time this airs, it'll be completed, but I hope to do it again. Is that, I'm inviting all these people to come and experience this. And I call it the stories we hold, because as you can tell, playback theater is like, what's that? I don't know. Let me explain it. And it takes a while. So I kind of shortened it and say it's just the stories we hold. And then I just say, you're going to be able to have a chance to experience some storytelling and story reflection, and you're going to give and receive empathy. So that's like kind of it in a nutshell, but it's really much more, expansive than that. So I do like to bring this to my clients, and then bring this to people who I think in the community who would enjoy this. And hopefully once they see it, they can say, oh yes, like this is great. Like we need this for our team, or I'd like to bring this to this group, because it is such a powerful tool.
I can imagine this being used, say, in an organization where the organization has gone through some kind of trauma, maybe after a layoff, or, some business setback, or something that was challenging for the business. Because often in business, we don't talk about those things. We just, we just experienced this thing happened to us. We all felt it, and we are told to, get back to work and get back to business as usual and keep our eyes on the prize and keep moving forward. How powerful this would be, Erin, to use with an organization who have stories like that, mutual stories of, things that the organization has been through.
Oh, Bella, I think that's a lovely idea. And like you brought up trust earlier, that takes a deep level of trust from the management team, right? To say, we're opening ourselves up to the, giving you the microphone, our employees, our teams, like you are the ones who get to share how you feel about this. I have been involved, so my experience with Playback Theater predates my business. So I've been doing playback since 2010, and I've been in many, many shows and through many, many different, venues and organizations. But it has been used in that capacity to, maybe there's a big change in the company or a new CEO, or, maybe there was some scandal even, where there's been some public awareness of a company and bringing in almost like a town hall meeting, but with an artistic flair. That is a huge level of trust that the leadership team has to have, because you're basically letting people share what they really feel, and then letting these, quote unquote strangers come in and take it and run with it artistically. It's a risk.
Yeah. But good leaders, right? They have to be able to do it. They have to let that happen. Because if there is not that level of trust in the organization, they're not going to be able to move forward effectively anyway. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So tell us about kind of what's happening with your clients now, and things are different, a little bit different, I think, than they were during the pandemic. Has there been a lot of turnover and a lot of new people going into these professions?
There has been, I think that, and I'm not hands-on in the industry, so I can't really speak to it for sure. But my understanding is, when the pandemic hit, there were some people who were, and just like we saw in education and other healthcare fields, some people who just said, goodbye, like I'm done. I'm taking early retirement. I'm done. I'm going to do something else. Or they had to because their kids were home all of a sudden, right? Or their grandkids were home and they needed to be caregivers so that the parents could still go to work. So I think there was a drop, a decline. And I think staffing is always a challenge in the US in healthcare. I think that's just across the board. I think it's a field where people burn out very quickly. I can only imagine that, in the really challenging fields of hospice or bereavement, that there is a lot of turnover, a lot of burnout. And that's really part of my mission, is that, usually when I talk to people about who I want to serve and who I feel called to serve, they're like, oh yeah, bereavement, hospice, I could never do that. And I'm like, I could never do that. Like, it literally is a calling. I think we're all on the same page, that like the people who do that work are called to do it. It is a purpose-filled job, if you even want to call it a job. And so my goal is to make sure that they can do it as long as they want to, and not feel that they have to leave because they are burnt out, because they are, not taking care of themselves because they're so busy, being a caregiver to everyone else. Not leave because of, not feeling seen and heard by management, not feeling understood and valued by the organization or the agency. Like, I want them to be able to do this work as long as they can and they want to. Because that's not everyone can do it. We all agree that like there are few people statistically who can do that work and do it well. And do it and thrive themselves, right? Yes. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but it sounds like what you're bringing to them is, it's some sort of resilience, right? Because if somebody I would imagine that if somebody's doing that work, if they became completely 100% emotionally involved in every single case, it would be very hard to keep going, right? So
Yeah.
they have to, like other people in healthcare, maintain some level of detachment from what they're doing. But on the other hand, as we discussed previously, too much detachment, they're not going to be effective. Right?
Yeah.
They're not going to do what the work needs them to do.
Yes. The boundaries, I think, are so critical, and they're critical on an individual level, right? Like everyone has to have their own individual boundaries, but then as a system, like healthcare needs to have, things in place so that the employees who work there can know that their boundaries are being respected, right? I think it's Brene Brown who says that the opposite or the antidote to burnout is not rest, it's wholeheartedness, right?
That's lovely.
Yeah. So we've got to make sure that people are full, right? That they're being fed and that they have everything that they need so that they can do that work and not burn out. And not have that boundaryless caregiving that literally just drains you.
Yeah. It's very important. And I love the idea of you, Erin, and the people that presumably that you are influencing being the sort of the caregivers that are supporting the caregivers. It's a fantastic approach that you are doing. Really.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It's really funny. I've gone through many different jobs in my years. I was a teacher for the first 2 years out of college. I floated around and did a lot of different things. But I remember at one point, I said, well, maybe I could be a nurse. Maybe I could. And I went to like a little open house at a local nursing school or something that was just opening. And I remember like, I should have known better. Like I get weak at the sight of blood. Like this is not something I can do. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't think I was married at the time, but I was dating my husband, my future husband. And he was like, why did you go? Like, don't you know this about yourself that like, you can't handle blood? Like, how do you think you could be a nurse? And so like, yes, like I know that I cannot do that work. Like literally it's not in my constitution. And yet I can support the people who do the work.
Yeah. Which is really needed. It's very much needed.
Yeah.
Erin, how can people find you if they want to continue this conversation, learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah. I would just encourage people to reach out, email me. So I'm Erin, ERIN at compassionatecoaching.org. And my website is www.compassionatecoaching.org. And I would love to continue the conversation in my inbox. So you can just feel free to send me an email.
That's great. So reach out to Erin, continue the conversation. So what is your one piece of advice for a young person starting out?
Well, I know I mentioned Brene Brown a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
But this actually comes from Brene Brown. I love her. She writes that we should have like a 1 inch by 1 inch piece of paper. That should be the size of paper that you write down all the names of the people whose opinions you really value, right? Because I feel as a young person, especially in this day and age, I mean, I'm in my 40s, so, I can't imagine being a young person now with just the internet at its level.
Yeah.
There's just so much, right? There's so many experts telling you what to do, so many opinions out there, so much information out there. But if you just keep in mind, who are the people whose opinion I really value, and maybe even do that, maybe even write down on a 1 inch by 1 inch piece of paper, like the names of the people. And then that can help you like kind of narrow in on letting go of the noise that's out there, right? And just really just know yourself and know that you don't have to do all the things. You really don't have to do all the things that people say you have to do, whether it's business or schooling or whatever it is.
Wow, that's really, really wonderful advice, because that's a very small piece of paper, right?
You're not going to
get a lot of names on that.
I know.
You're not going to but you don't have to be perfect at everything the way that the world tells you.
It's
Wonderful advice.
Yeah.
Well, Erin Whalen, thank you so much for traveling with me to the edges of Lean. I really enjoyed this conversation. I've learned so much from you, and I wish you all the best with your upcoming community get-together.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity. I love chatting with you, Bella. Thanks.
This is Bella Engelbach, and I'd like to thank Erin Whalen for being my guest on The Edges of Lean. What did you learn from this conversation? What ideas did it spark? We would love to hear from you. Find Erin at compassionatecoaching.org or on LinkedIn. Find me on LinkedIn or at leanforhumans.com, or comment wherever you watch or listen. Don't forget to subscribe and tell a friend about The Edges of Lean. Please join me in exploring more of The Edges of Lean. There's a lot to learn. And check out my friends in the Lean Communicators community at leancommunicators.com. You'll find more podcasts and videos with lots of great new content every week. The Edges of Lean is written and produced by Bella Engelbach with support from Podcast Inc. This is a Lean for Humans production.